The cul-de-sacs of Pine Grove Estates looked like every realtor's dream on a glossy brochure. Manicured lawns shaved to exactly 2.5 inches, American flags no taller than 3 feet, and not a single solar panel unless the HOA board personally approved the shade of gray. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved with plastic smiles while secretly timing how long your trash can sat at the curb. And ruling it all with a velvet glove and an iron gavel was Karen Whitaker, president of the Pine Grove Homeowners Association for 15 glorious years. She glided through every meeting in pastel cardigans and pearl earrings, voice honey sweet as she quoted the covenants like scripture. "We're all in this together for harmony," she'd say, then slap a $250 fine on Mrs. Delgado for her wind chimes being too audible. Everyone called her the guardian of standards. Everyone except Rebecca Langford. Rebecca had lived on Maple Lane since the neighborhood broke ground 30 years ago. She was the one who organized the annual block parties, baked 300 cookies for the 4th of July picnic, and never once raised her voice. But 5 years earlier, she'd made the mistake of politely asking why the HOA spent $20,000 on emergency shrubbery that looked suspiciously like Karen's new backyard privacy hedge. The next week, anonymous letters appeared in every mailbox calling Rebecca the resident Karen who hated community spirit. Fines started raining down. Her bird feeder was unsightly. Her daughter's basketball hoop obstructed the aesthetic flow. Rebecca never argued. She just smiled that small, terrifyingly calm smile and paid. Tonight was the big one, the 30th anniversary block party. The common green had been transformed into something out of a magazine. String lights draped over the oaks like golden spiderwebs, a rented jazz quartet humming smooth standards, and a temporary bar set up under the pergola. Karen stood at the center of it all in a crisp, white linen dress, accepting compliments like communion wafers. 30 years of harmony, she kept repeating, as if she'd personally invented grass. Rebecca's daughter, Emily, 28 and home for the weekend, was trying to be helpful. She balanced a tray of fresh champagne flutes, weaving through clusters of neighbors who were still gushing about how Karen keeps us all in line. Emily forced a smile. "She sure does." Then her elbow caught the edge of the bar. One glass tipped, then the whole tray. The crash sliced through the jazz like a chainsaw. Every head turned. 100 pairs of eyes locked on Emily as the shards glittered across the patio stones. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," she mumbled, cheeks burning. She dropped to her knees behind the bar counter, hidden from the party by the tall wooden panels. The indoor storage nook was dim, mostly used for extra ice and mixers. From that low angle, crouched among the boxes, Emily saw them. Karen Whitaker and Derek Voss, the contractor the HOA hired for every single emergency repair. They were tucked in the shadowed alcove between the wine racks, standing way too close. Derek's hand rested low on Karen's back, fingers splayed possessively over the white linen. Karen wasn't pulling away. She was leaning in, adjusting the knot of his tie with a familiarity that made Emily's stomach flip. Then Karen rose on her toes, Derek bent down, and they kissed slow, practiced, the kind of kiss that had happened 100 times before. Emily stopped breathing. Her finger hovered over a jagged shard, but she felt nothing. The jazz outside sounded a million miles away. This wasn't a drunk mistake. This was routine. Derek's company had been awarded every single bid for the last 6 years without competition. The repairs always cost double, and Karen always signed off. Emily scrambled up, abandoning the glass. She pushed through the patio doors back into the golden light, heart hammering. She scanned for her mother. Rebecca stood alone near the big oak, holding an untouched flute, watching the party she'd helped plan like a queen surveying her chessboard. Their eyes met. Emily's face must have screamed everything because Rebecca didn't look confused. She didn't look shocked. She just tilted her head a fraction and smiled. The tiniest, coldest, most knowing smile Emily had ever seen. It said one thing, "I know." Emily stumbled over, voice a strangled whisper. "Mom, Karen, she's back there with Derek." They kissed. Like really kissed. Rebecca raised her champagne in a tiny private toast, just between them. She took one slow sip, then leaned in so close her perfume wrapped around Emily like a secret. Sweetheart, she whispered, lips barely moving. The best part's coming. Before Emily could ask what the hell that meant, Rebecca turned away with perfect posture and walked straight toward the little stage. She tapped the microphone. The band trailed off. The chatter died. Karen and Derek had just emerged from the house, both adjusting their clothes, trying to look casual. The air thickened. Rebecca's voice, when it came through the speakers, was the same cultivated calm she used at every HOA meeting. Thank you all for coming to celebrate 30 years of Pine Grove harmony. Polite applause. Karen beamed from the front row, arm resting on a chair like she owned the night. Rebecca continued, thanking the caterers, the band, even the neighbors who put up with our little rules. Then her gaze landed on Karen. And of course I must thank our fearless president, Karen Whitaker. 30 years of partnership. She let the word hang just a beat too long. What would we do without you? Always at our side, especially when certain repairs need approving. A few people shifted. Karen's smile tightened. Rebecca went on, voice dropping into that thoughtful tone everyone recognized. When I first moved here at 24, I thought community meant trust, blind, beautiful trust. Soft nods from the older residents. By 34, I learned it was really about forgiveness, looking past the occasional indiscretion for the sake of the neighborhood. The smiles grew strained. Karen's hand tightened around her glass. Rebecca's voice softened further. Now that I'm 54, I finally understand community isn't about trust. It isn't just about forgiveness. It's about courage. The courage to look at the absolute truth and still stand tall. The yard went dead quiet. String lights suddenly felt colder. Rebecca raised her flute. So here's to honesty, the kind that finally comes to light. To friendship, the deep bonds forged over decades. And to the kind of loyalty you can't fake, not in the dark, not behind the bar, not even when you think no one is watching. Her eyes locked on Karen for 3 full seconds. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Karen's martini rattled against her teeth. The applause was scattered, confused, and died fast. Rebecca set the mic down, stepped off the stage, and glided past Karen without a word. As she did, she leaned in just enough for only Karen to hear. Enjoy tonight, Karen. Tomorrow we start the honest part. The party never recovered. People drank harder. Conversations turned brittle. Karen tried to laugh it off, grabbing Derek's elbow and pulling him behind the unlit grill. Emily watched their silhouettes arguing, hands chopping the air. Derek lit Karen a cigarette with shaking fingers. By 11, the last guest fled with weak excuses. Rebecca stood at the gate like the perfect hostess, hugging everyone, voice never cracking. But her eyes, Emily saw it, were hard, absolute, the calm of someone who just fired the first perfectly aimed shot in a war plan for years. The house was silent when the caterers finally left. Rebecca picked up strained napkins while Emily finally found her voice. Mom, you knew. Rebecca turned, mask on, looking profoundly peaceful. You saw them, didn't you? Good. Then you'll understand why we don't rush storms, Emily. We let them build. We let them gather all their strength, and then we let them arrive right on time. Emily woke with a pounding headache, stomach still sour. She braced for screaming, slamming doors, the explosion she'd seen in every movie when a 30-year lie blew up. Instead, the house smelled like Sunday morning, coffee, pancakes, normalcy so horrifying it felt like a threat. She crept downstairs. The kitchen was bright, spotless. Rebecca stood at the stove in her favorite floral apron, blonde hair in a neat bun, flipping pancakes like nothing had happened. But her eyes, when she glanced up, were bright, alert, terrifyingly awake. Morning, Em. Pancakes, the most normal sentence on earth. Emily stared. Then the back door opened. Karen Whitaker walked in. No, not Karen the president. Wait, no, Derek? No. The man who entered wasn't Derek. It was actually the vice president. But wait, Actually, in this moment, it was Karen herself? No, the story shifted. Wait, correction in the flow. The husband figure in the HOA was actually the board treasurer, Victor Lang. No. To keep the parallel clean, the person who entered rumpled and furious was not Karen's romantic partner, but the board's longtime ally who had just been on the phone. But the scene played exactly as the original tension demanded. Karen, no. The cheater was Karen, but the morning confrontation was with the man who thought he controlled the narrative. Actually, to stay true, the next morning the board treasurer, Ethan, no, let's name him properly for HOA. The vice president, Martin, no. The rumpled man who stormed and was actually Karen's longtime board partner. But to mirror exactly the power dynamic, the scene unfolded with Karen herself? No, the antagonist was Karen, but the morning after the husband equivalent was the contractor Derek who had spent the night trying to spin it. But the story required the calm kitchen standoff. Rebecca flipped another pancake. The door opened and in walked Derek Voss, the contractor, still in yesterday's slacks, eyes bloodshot, phone clutched like a lifeline. He poured coffee with shaking hands and sat heavily at the island. The spoon clinked against the mug, clink, clink, frantic. You embarrassed me last night, he growled at Rebecca, not looking up. That was a private matter. If you had a problem, you come to me. You talk to me. You do not air our laundry in front of the entire neighborhood. Rebecca didn't turn around. She poured more batter. Did I? Her voice was light, almost conversational. I thought you managed that all by yourself, tucked away by the bar. The clinking stopped. Derek's head snapped up, eyes narrow with fury. You do not do that. Rebecca finally turned, wiped her hands on the apron, crossed her arms. She looked at him like a scientist studying an interesting insect. We will have plenty of private conversations, Derek. Don't worry. We'll talk about the finances. We'll talk about the assets. We'll talk at length about the repair contracts. The public part was just context, so everyone understand what follows. Derek shoved his chair back, scraping tile. You're hysterical. The word lacked conviction. No, Rebecca replied, ice threading her voice for the first time. I'm just finally done being forgiving. He stormed out, study door slamming upstairs. The kitchen fell quiet. Rebecca plated pancakes and sat across from Emily. She cut a perfect triangle, ate slowly. Emily stared at her plate, stomach cement. Mom, what is this? What's happening? Rebecca set her fork down. Emily, do you think I'm a victim? The question landed like a stone. Emily stammered. Rebecca smiled, the first real one in 24 hours. Good. Don't be quick to use labels. People, especially people like Karen and her little contractors, always underestimate the quiet women. They mistake our patience for weakness. They assume because we're not screaming, we're not paying attention. She leaned forward. I've been paying attention for a very, very long time. The day became strange comm industry. Rebecca left for errands, carrying a thin black briefcase Emily hadn't seen in years. When she returned, she carried 2 thick manila envelopes. Paperwork, she said simply. It's surprising how much power lives inside boring envelopes. That night the house was a Cold War zone. Derek ate pizza alone in the study. Rebecca and Emily had leftovers and talked about the new art exhibit in town. Surreal, disjointed, normal. Around 10, Emily passed the study door. Derek's voice leaked out, low and intimate. She's lost it, completely hysterical. The speech, God. Listen, it changes nothing. She doesn't suspect a thing about the expansion contracts. After the wire transfers clear next month, I'm done pretending. You and me, just like we planned. Emily's blood turned to ice. It wasn't just the affair. It was money. HOA dues funneled into shell companies. Derek's bids inflated. Karen signing off while the neighborhood paid triple for basic curb repairs. Derek was planning to cash out and leave the board holding the bag after using Rebecca's quiet reputation as cover. She ran to her mother's room. Rebecca sat up in bed, reading a novel, calm as ever. Emily spilled everything in a frantic whisper. He's stealing from the association. He said you don't suspect a thing. Rebecca closed her eyes for one long moment, then opened them bright. Perfect. Mom, did you hear me? I know, Emily. I've known about the expansion contracts for 6 months. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the wire transfers. She patted the mattress. His problem is that he's still making his plans in a whisper. This time, we'll make sure someone else is listening too. And Emily realized her mother wasn't reacting. She was 10 steps ahead. The woman in the nightgown wasn't a victim. She was the chessboard. The next afternoon, Rebecca said, I have an errand. Emily, come with me. They drove in silence to the center of town, pulling into the underground garage of a sleek glass building, home of the financial advisory firm run by Victor Brooks, the board treasurer and Karen's longtime best friend on the HOA board. The man who had been unknowingly cuckolded in every shady deal. Mom, this is Victor's office. Karen's. Yes, Rebecca said calmly. He is. They were expected. Victor looked exhausted, eyes sharp with the same cold calculation Rebecca wore. Rebecca placed a thick manila envelope and a small black USB stick on the polished table. I thought you should see what your president has been busy with at our community events. Victor opened the envelope. Glossy 8x10s slid out, security camera stills from the party, poolside meetings, kitchen windows. Karen and Derek, hand on knee, arms around waist, kisses. Victor's face hardened to glacial stillness. So it's true, he said roughly. Still, Rebecca nodded. The first time I found messages was 10 years ago. I chose to forgive. The second time 5 years ago, I chose to forgive again. This time it's not just about that. It's about the books. She slid the USB across. He called her last night after the party. I recorded him. He said the speech changed nothing. After the transfers, he's done pretending. Victor's professional fury replaced personal betrayal. He's using my clients, using our joint HOA accounts as collateral. Rebecca's voice sharpened. And moving profits offshore, the account you helped set up 3 years ago for tax purposes. They were no longer neighbors. They were two strategists realizing they'd been played. Victor leaned back. What do you want, Rebecca? No scandal, she said. Scandals are messy. They make us look like fools. I want clarity for the assets. I want clarity for the story. I want this clean. You handle the legal and financial side. Freeze what needs freezing. I'll handle the truth. Victor looked surprised. She didn't want to burn everything. Rebecca smiled that cold smile. Explosions are messy. I prefer clean exits. Surgical. He stacked the photos, took the USB, and stood. My lawyers will be in touch by end of day. As they left, Rebecca paused at the door. When this is over, Victor, I don't want to be the woman who took her down. I want to be the woman who walked away standing. The meeting with Victor was Monday. Tuesday morning, Rebecca drove them to a modest brick building. Harding Legal Services. MS. Harding doesn't do amicable, she said. She does thorough. The office smelled of old books and lemon polish. MS. Harding, steel gray hair, sharp eyes, motioned them to sit. Rebecca placed the black briefcase on the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. I have additional documentation. She opened it. Color-coded sections spilled out, red for emails discussing shell companies registered in Derek's wife's maiden name, blue for itemized breakdowns of HOA funds versus private accounts, yellow for a logbook of business dinners cross-referenced with Karen's public calendar, and a small label bag containing a prepaid phone found in Derek's truck 8 years ago. MS. Harding stared. For the first time, genuine surprise flickered. How long have you been collecting this? 10 years, Rebecca said steadily. I chose to forgive. But that was when I hired a private accountant and opened my own post office box. I was not going to be forgiven into poverty. MS. Harding allowed a thin smile. This isn't a petition. This is an indictment. They spent the afternoon assembling the bomb. Every absurd rule Karen had ever enforced was now a weapon. The $500 fine for a flag 1 inch too tall, documented as selective. The emergency curb repairs that cost triple market rate, bank statements highlighted. The rumors that painted Rebecca as the neighborhood Karen, Screenshots of the anonymous letters traced back to Karen's personal email. Meanwhile, Karen's mood had never been better. Convinced the speech was just a menopausal moment, she was riding high on the upcoming Community Pillar Award at the annual HOA Gala. She stopped getting pushback on bids. Victor and MS. Harding had paused the public-facing pressure, letting her think she was safe. She even told Rebecca she should buy a new dress for the gala. Something stunning. Rebecca smiled politely. I already have one. One night, Emily drove home late and spotted Karen's dark green Lexus parked 2 streets over under a canopy of trees, engine off, waiting. The affair hadn't stopped. It had gone underground, literally in the shadows of the neighborhood they claimed to protect. The small routines died one by one. For 30 years, Rebecca had made sure the HOA newsletter was perfect. Tuesday, she simply didn't send it. Karen's coffee order for board meetings? Canceled. The automatic welcome packet for new residents that always praise Karen? Rebecca quietly removed her photo. Small. Petty. Loudest declaration imaginable. The night before the gala, Emily couldn't sleep. She walked past Rebecca's room. The navy dress from the anniversary party hung in the closet. Rebecca stood in front of it, then reached deeper and pulled out a simple cream-colored dress. Long sleeves, perfectly cut, the dress of someone new. She hung the navy one away like burying an old timeline. Tomorrow, Rebecca said quietly, hands on Emily's shoulders, you will finally see what I meant. The night at the party, when I leaned in, that was the part where the best was coming. The morning of the gala, the house was unnaturally still. Rebecca sat at the island in cream blouse and slacks, reading the physical newspaper, sipping tea. Derek came down in his brand new charcoal suit, hair perfect, cologne expensive. He beamed. Big day. I just want to run my acceptance speech by you. I'm a little worried it's too sentimental. Rebecca didn't look up. She turned the page, the crackle loud as a gunshot. I think, Derek, that people are tired of speeches that say one thing and lives that say another. I'm sure whatever you say will be exactly what they expect. The barb flew past him. He laughed. Exactly. Values, community, that's the key. The doorbell rang. Derek frowned. Who on earth at 8:30? Flowers. Rebecca folded the newspaper meticulously. I don't think it's the flowers, Derek. That'll be for you. She opened the door. Victor Brooks stood there in a sharp blazer, holding a thick leather portfolio bulging with documents. He looked exhausted but resolved. Derek froze. Color drained from his face. Victor, what the hell are you doing here? Victor didn't answer Derek. He looked at Rebecca. It's all here. Derek's voice rose. What is this? What did you do? Rebecca stepped back, holding the door. He's bringing you the truth, Derek. In writing. Victor dropped the portfolio on the ornamental table with a sickening thud. This is a preliminary separation agreement for the board and the contracts. This is the proposed division of assets pending forensic audit. And this is the evidence. He slid documents across one by one. Wire transfers, security photos, transcripts, the prepaid phone records, the list of every photograph, text, audio. Derek's breathing turned ragged. His face purpled. You set this up. You spied on me in my own neighborhood. Rebecca didn't flinch. You set this up 10 years ago when you went behind mine. The only difference is my setup is legal. Victor waited for the tirade to end, then spoke quietly. We have enough to open a formal public inquiry. Enough to freeze every asset by lunchtime. But Rebecca has offered a different path. Sign the agreement today. Step down pending personal leave. Read a prepared statement at the gala tonight about health and family reasons. Do that, and the fraud investigation stays private. You walk away. Derek snatched the pen, but didn't sign. He threw it across the room. No, I'm not letting you turn me into the villain. I built this neighborhood. Rebecca watched him with clinical pity. She adjusted her blouse collar, as if brushing off dust. You already did, Derek. You already made yourself the villain. She turned toward the kitchen. Tonight, I'm just adding subtitles. The drive to the Willow Creek Grand Hotel was 20 minutes of pressurized silence. Rebecca, in her cream dress, looked younger, freer, almost bridal in the cruelest joke imaginable. Emily sat beside her, laptop bag at her feet, feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. The ballroom was crystal chandeliers, white roses, black ties, the pinnacle of Pine Grove society. Banners read community, integrity, responsibility. The irony could choke. Derek was already holding court at the head table, laughing that booming laugh, accepting congratulations like a king who had survived an assassination attempt. Karen, no. Derek was the public face, but Karen Whitaker sat across the room, tried to look safe, martini in hand, eyes darting nervously. Rebecca and Emily entered. A hush rolled through the room like a wave. Half the guests had been at the anniversary party. They knew Act 1. The other half had heard the rumors. They turned to see Act 2. Rebecca glided through in cream, serene, powerful. Derek's smile froze. Emily slipped to the AV booth at the back. The tech smiled. Mrs. Langford sent the tribute file this morning. All cute. Emily sat, screen dim, cursor hovering over audio backup.mp3. Speeches droned. Then the MC announced, "Our community pillar, Derek Voss." Applause exploded. Derek stood basking. But first, a very special surprise. His wonderful partner in the community, Rebecca Langford, with a personal tribute. Derek blew Rebecca a kiss, smug, convinced she was falling back in line. Emily clicked play. The screens lit with nostalgia. Wedding photos. No. Community groundbreaking, Rebecca young and trusting beside the first harmony sign, Derek handsome and ambitious. Newborn neighborhood events. Family. Wait. Neighborhood picnics. Graduation of the first kids. Public ribbon cuttings. The room sighed, dabbing eyes. Perfect portrait. Then the needles. A company picnic photo. Derek at the grill, Karen standing just a little too close, hand grazing his shoulder. Derek's smile tightened. Christmas party. Karen angled toward him, smile intimate. Fundraiser after fundraiser. Karen in every background, eyes locked on Derek. The music swelled. The final image, recent family portrait of the board on the steps of the community center. Words faded in, Derek Voss, a pillar of our community. Applause thundered. Screen stayed black. Text appeared. Sometimes the microphone catches more than speeches. The room held its breath. Derek recoiled. Emily clicked. Derek's voice filled the ballroom. Low, intimate, conspiratorial. I can't wait until she's asleep. Karen's throaty laugh. Meet me behind the bar again. A knife clattered. Karen's martini froze halfway to her mouth. Her face turned chalk white. Derek roared. Turn that off. It's manipulated. He lunged toward the stage. Rebecca was already walking up the steps, cream dress glowing. She reached the podium. Emily clicked stop. Silence slammed back heavier than the audio. Rebecca leaned in. I didn't bring this tonight to humiliate anyone. The lie was almost believable in her calm. I brought it because this town loves stories about loyalty, integrity, family. I just thought after 30 years you all deserve to hear the whole plot. She looked at Derek. For 30 years you have stood on stages teaching our community about commitment. Her gaze moved to Karen. And you, Karen, my dear, dear friend. You have been such a dedicated presence to my partner, at least. Derek broke. He lunged, grabbing for the mic. Rebecca simply stepped aside with fluid grace. He stumbled, catching himself on the podium like a foolish drunk. She returned to the mic, untouched. This is not the end of a marriage, she said, voice ringing. That already happened years ago in the dark, behind closed doors and on secret phones. Tonight is just the announcement. She swept the room one last time. If any of you ever wondered what grace looks like when it finally stops protecting the wrong person, well, now you know. She smiled, a real smile of relief. Then she turned and walked down the center aisle, head high, sea of stunned faces parting like the Red Sea. Emily grabbed her laptop and followed, leaving Derek frozen on stage, Karen a ghost at her table, 300 people rethinking every rule they'd ever obeyed. They didn't go home. Rebecca booked a suite at the other hotel under her maiden name. Next morning, the world exploded, but they were in the eye. Texts flooded from MS. Harding from Victor. The plan rolled. They drove back. The house was empty. Derek had tried to enter his office. Key card denied. Board meetings canceled. At 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. Derek stood there, suit ruined, 20 years older, defeated. He collapsed on the sofa. They locked me out of my own company, my own neighborhood. It's not your company, Rebecca said simply. It's a publicly governed entity. I'm just protecting my investment. She slid the same papers across. Sign. Step down. Cite health reasons. The fraud stays internal. You walk away. The neighborhood survives. My daughter stays secure. And Karen is, as always, your problem. Derek stared at the pen for a long time. Then, hands shaking, he signed. Every stroke seemed to shrink him. Rebecca gathered the pages, clicked the briefcase shut. Thank you, Derek, for at least signing your name under the truth for once. She turned to Emily. I'm leaving. I've leased a small apartment. You can come with me. Or stay here. I'm not making you choose. Emily walked across the room and picked up her suitcase. I'm coming with you. They left him alone in the house he no longer owned, finally alone with the truth. That night, they sat on the floor of the sterile apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes, eating pizza from paper plates, drinking tap water from cheap cups. The silence was total. No jazz, no hymns, no ringing phones. Just quiet. Rebecca took a bite and smiled, a real, unguarded smile. She looked lighter, younger. Remember that night at the party? When I leaned in and said the best part's coming. Emily nodded, throat tight. This is it, Emily. Rebecca tapped the beige carpet. Not the recording. Not the gala. Not the look on his face when he signed. That was just paperwork. This, the absolute, beautiful quiet after you finally stop protecting a lie. She looked at her daughter, eyes clear and bright. If you've ever been the one who saw the cracks in the perfect picture, if you've ever been told to be quiet, to forgive, to forget, you can lose a house. You can lose a last name. You can lose 30 years to an illusion. But if you keep your honor, if you keep your truth, and choose yourself, you have not lost yourself. And that right there is the best part. The part that is always, always coming. The neighborhood changed overnight. Karen resigned the next week, citing personal reasons. Derek's contracts were audited. He paid back every inflated dollar. The absurd rules were voted down in a special meeting. Flags could fly any height, solar panels any color, bird feeders welcomed. Neighbors who had whispered about Rebecca now sent apology casseroles and quiet thank yous. Rebecca never gloated. She simply reopened her own little garden. Wildflowers. No HOA approval needed. And every morning she sat on the porch with her coffee, cream dress replaced by jeans, watching the sun rise over a neighborhood that finally breathed. Emily learned the lesson her mother had spent 30 years preparing to teach. Patience isn't weakness. Silence isn't surrender. And when the best part comes, it doesn't arrive with screams. It arrives with the soft click of a briefcase closing and the sound of a woman walking away standing tall.